Paul.
Hello, Sam. What's going on?
Not much. Looking forward to podcasting again.
Definitely. We are back with Generation Gap. It's been a little bit of a gap in with Generation Gap as we sort of got caught up in some of the things that life requires us to do and went and listened to some more music.
Absolutely.
Yep.
We took some time off to take care of some technical things to get ready
Mhm.
to get this published.
That's right. Feeling
So
good about that.
we're ready to go now. We've got a really interesting show coming up here.
I'm excited, but I have to admit this is the first episode of Generation Gap where I'm also a little nervous because it's I don't want to say that I'm outside of my comfort zone because I'm pretty comfortable with all music, but you're a Radiohead expert,
Yeah, I am
right?
a
So
Radiohead
it's
fan.
like, in fact, I get nervous sometimes even mentioning Radiohead around you because like I feel like that's all we'll talk about for like the next 3 weeks.
No, don't be nervous about that.
No, I'm
I
not. I'm
keep
half
it
kidding. I'm
real.
half kidding. I'm actually a huge Radiohead fan too. It's not a deep dive for me, but like I've liked Radiohead since um, yeah, probably since the mid '90s. Um, in
Oh
fact,
wow, okay.
when we were talking about this during one of our brainstorming sessions about Radiohead in general, I don't know why this popped into my head just a few days ago. Popped into my head like a lot of kids, like a lot of people my age. I guess still to this day, a lot of kids are in bands, but I think it was a little more popular in the late '90s to be in a band. Like everybody was in a band. And I was in a band, and we were in high school, and it was fun. And it totally, I don't think we ever thought it was going anywhere. It's just what you did. I mean, there was not a whole lot to do except listen to music, and you could try to go on the internet, but it took like 6 hours to sign on, so that wasn't fun.
Right.
And we used to cover High and Dry all the time by Radiohead. Um,
Yep.
and Yeah, so I've been a fan for a long time. So I'm excited to talk about this album. But I'm going to let you take the lead on this one for sure.
Okay. So my intro to this is for me. You were the one that actually introduced me to Radiohead, as I've told you before.
Yeah,
As you lent me a copy of OK Computer when I was, I don't know, years ago.
13 or
Um,
14. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
and I took it home, and it really resonated in me more with anything else than I'd heard. And I do know a lot about Radiohead and could talk about Radiohead for hours, and that's not because I um, sought that out. It was more or less just I listened to the music, I really loved it, I really connected with it, and then I was just curious, like, well, what are the circumstances that this piece of music was made in, and I
Mhm.
wanted to do the research and wanted to read about it. And then I just kind of happened to soak in a lot of knowledge. Um, but I'm really looking forward to this because this was my entry point into their
Yeah,
catalog.
yeah. And Radiohead, it seems to me like Radiohead is one of those bands where, for as long as you want to research, there will always be something new to learn. They're about as deep gets, right? I mean, some artists are pretty transparent. You can do some research, find out pretty much everything about their musical career. It's pretty straightforward. Radiohead just seems to be one of those bands that's just it's a riddle wrapped inside of an enigma, right? And you can just keep going. Like as deep as you want to go, you can go.
You have no idea
Yeah.
how
No, no,
accurate that
don't.
is,
Yeah.
and how many hours I've spent on like fan sites and talking to other people trying to figure things out because
Yeah.
it's not that they like intentionally leave riddles, it's just they're kind of private, so we have to kind
Right.
of string things together to figure things out, and it's just simply out of curiosity as to how this music was made.
Exactly. Exactly. And when they do interviews, I know they don't do a lot of interviews, but the interviews that they've done usually don't answer any questions.
They're always very vague.
Big and kind of, yeah, very sort of, yeah, yeah. They certainly don't give a lot of info about their process for sure. And I respect that. So we're talking today about the album OK Computer, um, which I would assume if you're listening to this podcast, you've probably heard OK Computer. If you haven't heard it, I would probably pause this podcast
Yeah,
and go listen to it
and then come back
and
and
then come
listen
back,
to us
right?
talk about it. Yeah, yeah.
Because, and I don't know, like it's one of those albums where you will one listen is only going to just be like you're just scratching the surface at that point with this music.
Yeah, absolutely.
for sure.
And I think it's definitely one of those records too that if you're into music, you've heard. Like you don't have to be a hardcore Radiohead fan to know this record.
Right,
This
right.
is a record that most people have heard.
Yes, definitely. So Sam, why don't you take us through, like, we're talking about OK Computer. This album was released in 1997, right? So,
Yep.
wow, 97. And why don't you take us through just a little bit for the first few minutes of the podcast, talking about OK Computer, and talk a little bit about like the the origins of the music. Um, what sort of what Radiohead were doing in the mid 90s, and then sort of where they went and how they got to this point to record this music.
So before this record came out, they released two records prior, Pablo Honey and The Bends, and they spent years upon years upon years just doing one long marathon tour, starting from around the time Pablo Honey came out, that just went right through the bends. And a lot of this record was inspired by being in transit. You know what I mean? That's something that Tom York, the lead singer,
Hmm.
um, really soaked in, and I think is really present in the music. There is
Hmm.
something. This is a great album to listen to if you're in the car, if you're sitting on a train or something,
Yeah,
because
that's
it
true.
it does have that kind of it does have that kind of feel to it.
It does. Yeah.
Uh, I don't know. I can't really say a lot because they are very secretive about it. But I
Hmm.
know that this was when they started to experiment a little bit. They started
Hmm.
to experiment a bit with drum machines
Hmm.
and dabble in the electronic field.
Definitely.
Johnny Greenwood, the guitarist, started using the mellotron, which is really present on this record.
Hmm.
Um, and they really made an interesting album that's a statement about where our society was heading due to technology,
Right.
and I think is probably more relevant today than it was when it came out.
Right. Oh, definitely. Without a doubt. In fact, so I remember probably about 10 or 15 years ago having a conversation with somebody about OK Computer, and talking about this idea that this album, to some degree, can be considered a foreshadowing of modern society, of like the society that we live in right now, our society, which is completely driven by technology, um, electronic devices, um, and this feeling of we're more connected than we've ever been. However, everybody is going through some type of isolation, and this is obviously exacerbated significantly now by the pandemic, but even pre-COVID times, you think back to 2017, 18, everybody was connected. You can message somebody, you can FaceTime somebody, there's so many ways we can connect to people, but we often feel very isolated,
Yeah.
very very alone, right? And there's something in this music that foreshadows that, right? This idea that we're designing all this technology to make our lives better. Um, However, maybe it won't work.
No, and I don't really think it has. And it's an interesting thing because it's not the whole idea of the album is not, oh, technology is bad, you know.
No, no.
But it's also it's more of a warning about what happens if we abuse it. And
Or, yeah, not only abuse it, but become too dependent on it.
yeah, that's way better
Yeah,
than I was
yeah,
putting it. It,
yeah.
it. it is. It's the world that we would live in if we became dependent on technology. And to be honest, we are living in the world of OK
I,
Computer right now.
and I think we totally let that happen as a society, and specific, and not only in the United States, but relatively pervasively across the planet, in developed nations. We've let this happen. Like, there's this idea of letting the technology make the decisions for us to some degree. A
Absolutely.
lot of us live our lives now around the availability of technology. Who has the best Wi-Fi? Who accepts a digital payment and who doesn't? Things like this. We've let it kind of take control, and I'm fascinated by the idea of the fact that, like, if you listened to this album when it came out, and I don't remember the first time I listened to OK Computer. I wish I did, but I don't know. But if you listen to this album when it came out and then listen to it again now, I really would love to know what the reaction would be to that, and say, wow, when I listened to it in 1998, I was like, it paints this picture of tech sort of like overrunning, but I don't think we'll ever get there. And now that we're there, it really is an interesting, um, from a standpoint of like talking about music. It really is interesting.
No, absolutely it is. Um, I do remember the first time I heard OK
Okay.
Computer.
Okay.
Uh, I was in middle school.
Hmm.
I think I was 14.
Okay.
Um, and I took it home, the
Hmm.
copy you let me. I
Yeah.
think this was way back when you were my Italian teacher.
Yeah.
And I remember putting it in and was all like, what is this?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was like, this is awful.
Yeah.
um,
Right.
and something about it really intrigued me though.
Yeah.
So I kept going back to it and listening to it and being like, nope, this isn't for me.
Okay.
Nope, this isn't for me. And
Right.
then I was all like, what if I listened to it with the lyrics? And I was like,
Okay.
because I can't understand a single thing Tom York is saying.
Right. Most of the
Um,
time. Yeah.
which, yeah. So I listened to it again with the lyrics and I was like, oh, okay, I'm starting to see the appeal.
Hmm.
But the day it clicked for me,
Hmm.
I remember this day very vividly. It
Hmm.
was, I was driving to the Bronx Zoo in New York for my mom's birthday, and I was listening to it in the back of the car,
Yeah.
and it just clicked. I was all
Yeah.
like, "Oh my god, this is the greatest album I've ever heard."
Yeah. Wow. That's interesting. That's really interesting. Yeah, I mean, I haven't listened to it. So when we decided to talk about this album for the podcast, I went back and I've listened to it now about 3 times, pretty close to 3 times, over the last maybe week and a half, 2 weeks. And a few, these are some of the things that stood out for me over the past. I would call them like these modern experiences that I've had while listening to it. First of all, I find it to be a relatively, what's the word I want to use? The word that comes into my head is like a disjointed album. Um, it it doesn't have a nice flow, or like, it's not a cohesive, at least like these new interpretations, the way that I'm understanding it now. It doesn't really flow. There's a sort of like almost like a staggering quality to a lot of the music.
Hmm.
And a lot of the music doesn't seem to really, again, it's just disjointed. I don't want to say mesh, because there definitely are themes that sort of glue the tracks together, um, but in a very sort of Radiohead kind of way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would say that the sequencing of the album I think is really strong.
Okay.
I do disagree with you on that.
Yeah.
Um, but at the same time, the way it's sequenced and the way it flows works, but works in a way that only Radiohead could make work.
Yeah. 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 That could be it. That could be it. Um, yeah. There's something to me about like some of the tracks to me just feel very sort of, yeah, just sort of disjointed. Um, but that also could be intentional on their part. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
there is this sort of like, yeah, almost like there are parts in the album where it kind of hits a wall, but then you kind of just let let it stop, and then you keep going, um, and just kind of go from there. I don't know. What are some tracks for you that like stand out for you?
Um, they all have at one point or another.
Yeah,
Because like I say, I am very open about this when I talk about Radiohead with people and other Radiohead fans, that
yeah,
my relationship with this music changes all the time. Like it's not what it was when I first heard it. It
right.
means something
No, me
different to me
neither.
now.
Right.
Um, and it really just depends on what's happening in my life and the world around me. You know, right now, Paranoid Android does mean something different to me than it did a while ago. Is I feel like that is a little more relevant to my life at the moment um, than it was when I first heard it. I mean, I've always loved that song. Don't get me wrong. I've always thought that was a brilliant track and one of the best things they've done. But just emotionally, it connects with me a bit more now than it did when I first heard it, and definitely could say the same for No Surprises and The Tourist.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Um, I think for me, yeah. So Karma Police was the big track. It was like the big track off this record. And I feel like if you've never really been like a fan of this album, I think you've probably all heard, I think everyone's heard Karma Police, right? Because it
Yeah,
kind
I
of
think so.
it's kind of like the standout track from this album. Even though it's not my favorite off the album, it is an interesting song. I love the way it sounds. I love the lyrics. Love the ending.
Mm.
Um, so let's talk about that for a minute. Let's talk about
Yeah,
the fact that Karma Police. So first of all, the idea of karma is very. I'm fascinated by the idea of karma. I've always been fascinated by the idea of karma. Um, and so, like the lyrics in this song and the interpretation of the song. What's your take on this song?
I've always so my interpretation is kind of mixed with different things that um, the band have said about it.
Yeah,
I've always taken this song as about that feeling of helplessness that you
yeah,
have towards you know the world around. Let me try start this again.
yeah,
It's almost like that feeling you have when you've been slighted by your boss
mm,
or by your government or something like that. Because I remember when Karma Police really uh, meant something to me was a couple of years ago when I was working at my very first job and my boss was absolutely awful.
hmm,
Karma Police really was all like, yeah, one day, you're gonna get what's coming for you. You're gonna get
yeah,
paid back for treating me like garbage.
right,
Um, but it's interesting what the band's interpretation of the song is because the Karma Police is an inside joke among the
mm,
band.
okay,
They used to say supposedly that whenever one of the bandmates would act shitty towards one of the other members would say, "Oh, the Karma Police are going to get you for doing
right,
that."
yeah,
But it's also a statement about apparently this is just what Thomas said that line buzzing like a fridge is supposedly about 90s alt rock radio and how
ooh,
every single song sounds the same to the point that it's no different than a fridge buzzing in the background.
okay, fair enough, yeah.
Um, I don't know. What's your take on it?
So I've heard the song more times than I can count, and like when I listened to it this week and like last week a few times, I almost wondered the every single time I've listened to Karma Police, I thought it was like from the eye of the beholder, the singer, like the narrator, telling everybody else. Like so, I always picture like somebody walking with a backpack like through like a really crowded uh, city, like London, New York, whatever,
Mm,
and there's everything is just it's chaos. It's that chaos of being in a crowded, populated urban area, and everything's kind of happening by itself, and somebody bumps into you or somebody spills coffee on you, whatever happens, and you say this idea that this is what you'll get, this is what you get when you mess with us, in the sense that there's all this chaos. But the last few times that I listened to it, I spun it around, and I saw like the the lyricist, the narrator, as the antagonist. So the as the person who's been kind of like been a terrible person to everyone, and now he's like reaffirming in his brain, like this is what's coming my way if I keep doing this, right? If I
that's interesting.
keep doing this to everybody, um, this is what goes around comes around mentality, right? But then
Yeah.
I love how you kind of like he follows it up with, for a few, for a minute I lost myself, in the sense that he's really not that worried about it. He's going to keep doing the same shit to people that he's always done. I
That's
don't know.
I've never
Yeah.
heard that interpretation of it.
It just came to me like the other day, and it was like almost like an inner monologue, where like you're telling your stuff like, I shouldn't do that, I shouldn't do that, I probably shouldn't have done that, and you do it anyway.
That would make sense, and that could be like a legitimate interpretation that the band has because I know that OK Computer is supposed to be almost like vignettes, or I know I'm not saying that word right, vignettes
Oh, vignette, yeah. Mhm.
of different people in different circumstances.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's a really interesting
That's the way
interpretation
I
that I've
heard it.
never
Mhm.
heard.
Yeah, never heard it that way before. It was always like supposed to be like almost like a cautionary, like This is what you get if you keep doing this. But the last two times I heard the song, it was like, no, no, this is what I'm getting.
Yeah,
That's what's coming my way, right? I don't know. Interesting. And then, of course, the song. How do we describe the ending of the song before it bleeds into "Fitter Happier"? Um,
that squeal.
just so basically, what the song kind of breaks down, right? It
Yeah,
it breaks down. The tempo goes erratic. It breaks down, and so I think it's like in my mind, it's an interpretation of the technology failing, right? Is that what it is? It is it intentional? You think, or do we know?
I know that. Yeah, I know that
Yeah.
that's intentional. Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Oh, I
I
know it's
know
intentional, but like, what was their intention?
in terms of meaning.
Yeah. Do you know?
I I I don't know.
Okay.
I do know. I read an interview somewhere
Yeah.
where I guess Tom may have been kind of drunk while working at the end of that song.
Yep.
Um, it could
Yeah.
be the technology breaking down.
Yeah.
Um,
Like intentional technology breaking down, right?
that could very well be. I actually don't
Yeah.
know what that's supposed to symbolize. I know how they got the sound, but I don't know what that's supposed to
How did
symbolize.
they?
So the guitarist Ed O'Brien um, used a delay pedal and put his guitar to an amp and got this feedback, but because
Yeah.
of the delay pedal, the feedback just kept
Kind of
repeating on a loop, and
loop.
that's what
Yeah.
that is.
That's awesome. Yeah. It's really cool.
Yeah,
And it's very uncomfortable.
it is
Um,
uncomfortable.
Especially since the song itself has like a nice, smooth, even tempo. It's a very nice song, and then it kind of goes into this very sort of disjointed, weird, spiraling off tempo ending. Um,
Right.
and then it bleeds into fitter, happier.
Which is
Which
a horrifying track.
it's horrifying. Now, let me ask you this: is it hard for you to listen to the whole track?
No, I mean I don't ever wake up and feel like I feel like listening to Fit or Happier, but if I'm listening to OK Computer, then I do listen to it.
That's
It's
not right, but that's not what I asked. Like, I wouldn't skip it either because I feel like it'd be wrong to skip it. But like, I want to skip it.
it it always leaves an impression on me because
Yeah,
it's just like it gives me the chills because
yes,
it's so uh, uncomfortable.
it's so uncomfortable, right? And so when we were talking about uh, doing a podcast for OK Computer, I went and did some research, and I never realized that again. So it was a it was a track that Tom wrote, but then they used the version of they used an Apple computer, right? It was a synthesized voice um, that used to come with certain Macintosh software back in the 90s. Um, and so the idea that an artist wrote it, but then chose not to sing it and have a computer sing it for him or perform it for him, it's kind of deep,
Yeah,
right?
and I think it's
Yeah.
better. I don't think it would have been as good if Tom
Oh
was singing
no,
it.
no, no, no. The fact that it's a computer doing it is it makes it so much more interesting.
You know that used to be the walk-on music during the OK Computer tour.
Oh, was it?
They'd walk on stage to that, and then they open with Lucky or
Oh,
Airbag.
oh wow, I didn't know that. That's really
Um,
cool. Yeah.
what's also interesting about this is I didn't know this until I was doing research on this track, but apparently there's a sample in that from the movie 3 Days of the Condor. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie,
No, no.
but that line, "This is the Panic Office,"
Oh yeah.
you hear is a sample from that film.
Okay. All right. Interesting. Um. Yeah, that's really interesting. It's such a polarizing uh segment of
Just
music.
completely unsettling.
So unsettling
But
and
that being said, a very powerful
powerful.
song.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Definitely. Um. It always makes me think of the movie Train Spotting. Have you seen?
Oh yeah.
Okay, because like at the end of Train Spotting, when he lists the, now I got to look it up. Right, he has that very famous. And wow, Train Spotting was 1996. So he has that very famous "Choose Life" monologue, right? Um, which is sort of like it kind of fits in with the fitter, happier context, you know? So this idea, like, I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's pretty long, but like, choose a job, choose a career, choose a family, choose washing machines, cars, compact disc players, and electrical tin openers, choose good health, low cholesterol, and dental insurance. And it goes on and on. And it's this idea of all the things that you should be doing, right?
Huh.
And I don't know, and fitter, happier is kind of the same. It's kind of the same idea, right? Like, here's what you're supposed to be doing as a good person.
Yeah.
Yeah, deep,
Yeah. It
Sam.
is deep. It is
Yeah,
deep.
yeah. Um, so after listening to the music again, after not having really listened to it in a while, climbing up the walls has it's always been one of my favorite tracks on the album. And then as of right now, with my new found sort of appreciation, it definitely is my favorite track on the album, without a doubt, hands
Interesting.
down.
Okay.
I love it. I love how the music, first of all, is about as ominous as I think it's about as ominous as Radiohead gets. Um, it's just the the whole the whole vibe of the track is just so dark. It's so dark.
Yeah.
I love the drum part. It's so good. The lyrics, like we've mentioned, in classic Tom York fashion, are relatively indecipherable. But if you pull them up on a computer as you listen to the music, um, it is powerful, right? Just
Very.
really powerful. Yeah. There's so many ways that these lyrics in this track can be um, interpreted. It's also sung in a first person narrative, like I am. Like, the first words of the track are I am. And that repeats over and over again in the song. So my question, or my like thought process, is who?
Who?
Is it
Mm,
is it a person? Is it an entity? Is it this idea that society is sort of heading in a direction that it shouldn't be heading in? What who is the sort of antagonist of this track that is this sort of malevolent force that's present in this music?
I've always taken it as a person, and
Okay.
I think that's just simply I think it says it right on the OK Computer Wikipedia page that
Does it?
it's pretty, that it was inspired by, an article in the New York Times about why people just snap one day
Oh,
and
okay.
just
Okay.
go and kill people.
Yeah.
And it was partly that, and that I guess hit home with Tom because he worked at a psych ward apparently when he was in his early 20s.
Of course he
Um,
did.
of course he did. Come on, that shouldn't surprise you. So I've always taken it as the first person,
Hmm.
and just being a person.
Hmm.
Interesting to note, though, if
Okay.
there is a creepier version of this song that does exist, and that is the live version, any live version,
Okay.
because when they play it live, Johnny Greenwood plugs a transistor radio into his amplifier and switches between FM stations while the song's playing and manipulates that, which
Interesting.
I don't know, it does something to it that just elevates the creepiness to a whole nother level.
Oh, of course. Yeah. This is the one track on the album for me that will get stuck in my head for a day or two because of the way it kind of staggers along. The drum part is so good, such a great drum
Yeah.
part. And it's just, you just find yourself, at least I find myself, singing or humming the lyrics, probably incorrectly because they're hard to memorize. But it's my favorite track. It's such a dark track. It's such a great song, though. Such a great song.
Yeah, I also love that part where after the second chorus, where it just completely goes off, and
Yeah,
it feels like the whole song's like imploding on itself, and then
it
it
does.
ends with Tom screaming.
Screaming, just absolutely screaming. You hear like stuff falling off of shelves and like doors slamming, and I don't know how many different things are happening uh, in the background during that song, but it's really dark. It's really fascinating.
And then it goes into No Surprises, which is
Yeah, nice, clean, happy. Yeah,
No, I would argue that's one of the most depressing songs on
Is
the
it
record
really?
too. Have you heard the lyrics?
Oh yeah, I've looked at other. Yeah, but I mean the opening chords are kind of happy, aren't they? It's a kind of a mellow opening.
I guess I could see that.
After climbing up the walls, it sounds pretty mellow.
It's a cool down track definitely after that to
Yeah, yeah,
kind of, because if they put another super fast song after that, that would not have worked. That would have just been too
right,
bottom heavy.
right. Um, yeah, I mean it is still. Yeah, it's not a happy song. There are no happy songs on this album. I don't think.
No.
No, they really are. Um, Lyrically, we unfortunately I don't think we can get into sort of the depth of Tom York's his lyrics because they're just so deep. They're so deep. Um,
I've been doing it for a good 5 years now, and I'm still not finished. So yeah.
right, right. His vocal performance in pretty much every track is pretty astounding, though. Like he's a really, really good singer. And I think a lot of the tracks on this album really highlight how good of a singer Tom York really is. Um, he's got an incredible range, an incredible. Um, his voice can be so delicate at some points, but other times it can just be so powerful. So it's really highlights, I think, his ability as a singer.
Yeah, I would agree. It's probably one of his strongest vocal performances. Um, and the last time that he would use his vocals that way for a long time, because if you get into the stuff that happened after OK Computer, when they did Kid A and Amnesiac, his vocals were
Mm,
heavily manipulated on a lot of those songs.
that's true. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, this
It
is
wouldn't
just
be, I
very
think,
sort of.
until in Rainbows that he returned to that vocal style.
I think so. Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah. Yep. Um, what are some other observations that I've had? So I was like debating whether I should bring this up, but why not? It's generation gap. We talk about music.
Let's do it.
To bring this up, but I think I will because hey, it's generation gap, and we talk about music. There have been a lot of people who've made parallels between OK Computer and Pink Floyd's The Dark Side of the Moon. Um, there are a lot of similarities, I think, between the two albums, and I've always been kind of resistant and hesitant to the to this idea that there's somehow like people have even called OK Computer like the dark side of the 90s. I don't know though. I can see why. Like I get where it comes from. But what's your take on that?
So, in general, I don't like those comparisons
Right.
because I feel like it lessens the music that it's being compared to.
Right.
In this case, I feel like OK Computer is its own thing and shouldn't be compared to anything else.
Right.
But I feel that way towards all music, because obviously what's if OK Computer is the '90s version of Dark Side of the Moon, then Dark
Right.
Side of the Moon is what to what. That's the way I
Exactly.
always see it.
Yeah, fair enough.
Um, I get why people say that,
Yeah.
but at the same time, I just think that they're too different. I think
Too different.
I guess there's some overlapping themes, but overall, I think Dark Side is OK Computer's a rock record, and
Yeah.
so is Dark Side of the Moon. But to me, Dark Side of the Moon has more of an ambience to it than OK
Mm-hmm.
Computer does,
Mm-hmm.
which really is what makes it so
Right.
stark and different for me.
Yeah. Right. Well, yeah, I mean OK Computer, in my opinion, is a much more aggressive album than Dark Side. Dark
Oh
Side
yeah,
is not really an aggressive album, and I can see where some of the similarities come from because there's the themes are kind of similar in the sense of this idea of isolation or um, this idea that like technology is changing music, but yeah, I don't know. They also some of the recording techniques, the idea of like using different technology, having like voices and things like that, or altering the sound to some degree to make it sound specifically different. But yeah, I don't know. Like I agree with you. There's always going to be. I mean, I think as humans we compare things. This
yeah.
reminds me of this, but and I don't think it's a bad thing. But I never quite saw the parallel strong enough to say that, oh yeah, it's like a modern interpretation of Dark Side of the Moon. I don't see it. It's no.
What happened was is I think that after the 90s when there was all this kind of grungy and Britpop, which was is great music, but it's not uh progressive music. Like it's not like um there's no hint of experimentality in it. It's just pretty standard,
Mhm.
rock that's done new.
Right.
And OK Computer saw experimentation, and I feel like that whenever an album that's slightly weird goes into the
Mm,
mainstream, people
yeah.
go, "Oh, this is like Dark Side of the Moon," or
Yeah.
now it's like, "Oh, this is like so and so's version of Kid A," and it's like, well,
Yeah.
come
Yeah.
on,
Yeah. No, you're right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I try to not do it. I think we all do it, but yeah, I agree with you.
yeah,
It's a great album, and I feel like again, a lot of albums, not all music stands the test of time. Um, and what's interesting about Radiohead is they seem to be ahead of their time to some degree. So not only does this album stand the test of time, it's arguably more relevant now in 2021 than it was when it was released.
yeah. I
And
mean, if
that's
you gave
pretty
me OK
rare.
Computer, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
It's pretty rare. I mean, most music dates itself, right? Most music ages itself.
Hmm.
Um, and I think this album is a rare exception to that, where it kind of predates itself.
Yeah, because I was gonna say like if you handed me if I had no idea who Radiohead was and you
Yeah,
handed me OK Computer and told me that this had just come out this year,
yeah,
I would believe you.
yeah. For the most part, I mean, there are. Yeah, I think I would too. I mean, it doesn't. There are some. Yeah, wow. That's an interesting question. I wonder if you'd be able to tell if it's like a '90s record. I don't know. That's a
I mean,
really
if you didn't know the fitter half of
yeah.
your voice was a Macintosh computer, like I,
Right.
I don't think you would know.
It's interesting. Wow. That's yeah. Yeah, it definitely doesn't sound like it's as old as it is. That's definitely true.
No.
Um, I really wonder. Yeah, I wonder how that album would be received today if it came out today. Um, Such an interesting question. Yeah, it's a great album. Radiohead's the kind of band where, for me anyway, speaking just for myself, I tend to go in like in waves with Radiohead. Like I'll listen to their music for a while. Um, we mentioned In Rainbows, which is my favorite Radiohead
Mm.
album, and then I'll like listen to it and be like, wow, that's probably the best album ever recorded. And then like I kind of just put it away for a while. I don't know. And then like 6 months will go by, 4 months will go by, and I'm like, you know what? I think I'm gonna listen to some Radiohead. So
Mm.
there's just something very polarizing about their music.
Oh yeah.
And again, there's a theme that we always have um, for generation gap, and I think one of the themes that we always seem to come back to is I agree with you that you can listen to this album in the car. You could put it on an airplane and like have your earbuds in and be fine with it. But I can't be doing anything else when I'm listening to this. I couldn't be like working on a project or something because I have to really pay attention to the music.
I completely agree with you
Yeah.
and feel the same way. But like the reason why I said that was because I
Mhm.
feel like in terms of my experience, the
Yeah.
experience of the listening to the album is elevated when you're
Yeah.
in motion
Oh,
for
okay.
whatever reason.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay.
Um, it's it's for whatever reason like a really amazing experience to be stuck in traffic and listening to this record.
Doesn't that just fit? Yeah.
It
Yeah.
perfectly fits,
Yeah.
and it's like so this is actually a crazy story. Whenever I drove through Hartford for the longest time, I felt the need to put on this record.
Okay.
It was just a thing that happened because it felt very OK Computer to me, and I just
Yeah.
did it.
Okay.
Come to find out years later, the album cover is Hartford, Connecticut.
No way.
It absolutely is. Do you know? I don't know the name of the highway because I'm horrible with that. But you know, when you're going into Hartford, you go through that tunnel and there's all these
Yeah.
lights,
Lights.
and you
Yeah.
come out of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the OK Computer cover.
How random. How is that possible? That's super random.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that's crazy. What's also interesting though, and I'm not making this up. We talked about a week and a half ago. We said we are going to talk about OK Computer on the next podcast, and we talked about Radiohead, and then like the next day, every single thing that I did had like some type of Radiohead connotation to it. So like, no, I'm serious. It was the creepiest thing to the point where
I gotta hear this.
no, it was like so like we talked about Radiohead at length for like a half an hour, and then like the next day I was like on my phone and like I saw like a post by Radiohead on Instagram. Fine, fine, whatever. And then like an hour later, like I put on like a playlist on my computer, and like it just so happened that it was like a song from In Rainbows came on. I'm like, oh, it's a Radiohead song. And then like when you log onto YouTube and it like has recommendations based on stuff that you've already watched.
I love going down that rabbit hole.
It's such a dangerous rabbit hole. So it was like, Conan O'Brien clip, and then like Radiohead like in the in the basement, the In Rainbows in the basement, live in the basement. And it's like, whoa, we were just talking about Radiohead. I'm gonna watch it. But it continued like all day with this like Radiohead theme. Um, it was actually kind of creepy for a little while, and it was like 6 different things that happened that were like directly related to Radiohead.
Yeah,
Really weird. It was really
I
weird.
have
I'm
those
fine
days
with
and
it.
they're great.
Yeah, yeah. So it's a great album, and it's one of those albums where it doesn't have the personal meaning for me the way like some of the other music we've talked about on the podcast does.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's a great album. Love it. Very, very
I
interesting.
Yeah, I would agree with you. Like the music does mean a lot to me because
Yeah,
Radiohead's been such a big part of my
yeah,
life and the person that I am.
yeah.
And they're the only band I can say that about. But there are other albums that mean more to me emotionally
Yes,
than OK Computer does,
sure.
which is not to take away from it, but
I'd love to find like a kid who's about 15 or something who would be willing to like sit and listen to it from beginning to end and get their take on it. Like a
I did.
room. Yeah. Yeah, I know, but that was a while ago now, right?
Oh
That was
yeah,
a
we've
while
been
ago.
doing this podcast.
The world is different. I mean, the world's so different now. So like I'm talking like a modern 15-year-old kid, like who's lived through COVID, who's maybe had to learn at home on a computer, right? Like,
Yeah,
right? For a
I don't
year.
know. I busted out my OK Computer vinyl quite a bit during the height of the pandemic.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, we have such a different take, and like I'd love to get a young person's take and say, no, no, you got to listen to it. You got to from beginning to end, and like
With the
um,
lyrics.
with the lyrics up in front of you, and then at the end of it, like we'll talk about it. And what's really interesting, and I feel like this would be like a what's I feel like this would be like high praise. I'm just envisioning a situation where like some 15-year-old kid would listen to the like you'd sit them in a chair and say you got to listen to it the whole album. Okay, okay, I will. And then you go back in the room when it's over and you're like, what do you think about OK Computer? What was your like gut reaction to this music? And they were like, I don't know, I was on TikTok the entire time, didn't really listen. Right? But actually, wouldn't that be perfectly fitting? Like that
That
be
would be so perfectly fitting. That's like the most Radiohead thing I could think of.
it's the most Radiohead thing I can think of, right? Yeah. Well, that's
Um,
our OK Computer episode.
yep.
Yep.
I'd like to take a second to tell the viewers that if you are a massive OK Computer fan, I encourage you to listen to the OK Not OK box set.
Yes.
The deluxe version of the B-sides, that's great. And
Yeah.
if you like that, then there are 16 hours of sessions scraps that are on the internet that I have gone through a couple times and are ugly and beautiful.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to find a live version of. Link me later to a good live version of "Climbing Up the Walls." I got to see if it's even
I
creepy.
know the exact one.
Okay, I'm gonna listen to it. What are we gonna do to end the podcast here? We got to talk about a couple things. I will tell you, Sam, that I have had something on repeat.
I'm excited. What is it?
You ready for this?
I am.
I've been listening to a lot of early Elton John.
We've discussed that you do like early Elton John. We've
I
talked about this.
love early Elton John, and he's one of those people. I mean, Elton John lately has kind of been everywhere. He's doing like commercials now for I think Grubhub or something, Uber Eats. I
Oh
don't know.
yeah, with Lil Nas X.
Yes, yes, and I don't know why he's doing it because whatever they're paying him, it cannot be for the money because he's Elton John. So I'm not really sure why he's doing these commercials. Maybe boredom, but
Yeah, that's a actual possibility.
actual possibility. So I don't know what got me on this Elton John kick. It started with I mean, I've been a huge Elton John fan since I was a little kid. In fact, my first experience with music, I'm going to go with this. I'm going to put this out there. My first
Okay,
experience with music was probably Elton John because I think
interesting.
one of my first memories as a very young person, a toddler. When do you first remember? Like three, four, somewhere in there, two, three, I don't know.
Yeah, I think my earliest memory is 3 or 4 years old.
Three or
Yeah,
four. Yeah, I'm going to go with that. I can remember being in my parents' bedroom and they would play Crocodile Rock by Elton John, and that song was kind of old then, and I would
yeah,
jump on the bed because it was like a fun party song, and it's one of my first musical memories. That and Buddy Holly. So
that's
because
a
my dad,
great. Those are
yeah,
great ones.
yeah, my dad was a huge Buddy Holly fan, but
That look is coming back. On a side note, that
yes,
Buddy Holly look is back.
we should do an episode on Buddy Holly and just how cool he was because Buddy Holly was the first really just awesome, cool. We remember when we did the whole episode on Spoon
Yeah, that's right.
and about how cool Spoon is, and no one could outcool Spoon.
Buddy Holly could.
Buddy Holly could. Yep,
One of the few.
one of the few because he was like 40 years ahead of his time.
No,
But
he really is the king of cool. And you know what? Spoon, like their whole aesthetic does remind me a lot of Buddy Holly.
definitely, definitely.
Yeah,
Um,
he was walking out with those cool jackets and those glasses. Man, that Buddy Holly movie too is great.
it's awesome. Yeah. But anyway, back to Elton John. Yeah, he's got
Yeah,
a track called Mona Lisa's and Mad Hatters. I don't know if you know it. It's a great track.
I
It's
think
about
I've heard of it.
yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know if I've heard it.
It's about New York City, and I've been missing New York City a lot. So like that got stuck in my head. So then I had to go back through and listen to like Rocket Man and Someone Saved My Life Tonight and Leave On and all these classic Elton John songs and Tiny Dancer. So I've been listening to a ton of Elton John, early Elton John. Man, could he sing when he was young? So good,
Yeah,
so good. Such a great vocalist, such a great performer. Um, that's what I've been listening to a lot. It doesn't mix well with Radiohead, but anyway,
no,
no,
that's two different universes.
two different universes. What about you?
Um, so obviously the bonus tracks on the Kid A reissue I've been into a
Yeah,
lot,
right.
but we already talked enough about Radiohead, so I'm just gonna skip over that.
Okay,
The real thing that's got me excited lately is this should come as no surprise to you,
right.
but the new Snail Mail record is absolutely insane,
Okay.
completely outdid herself.
Really?
I cannot stop listening. It's one of the best things I've ever heard. I am completely in love with it. I've listened to it like 6 times, and it's only been out like 2 weeks.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah,
Yeah,
I gotta listen. I still haven't listened to it yet. I gotta do it though. Yeah,
it's so much better. I mean, I love her first record, but it's a million times better than her first record. And I'm really hoping not overhyping it. It's just it's more mature, it's
yeah,
more interesting sonically, and I think that it is emotionally a lot heavier
yeah,
and hits harder.
yeah. Cool. I gotta listen to it. Um, Before we end the album or the podcast, end the podcast with a trip back in time. Um, we're not doing a Christmas episode, are we?
Do you want to?
I don't know. Kind of like I have like this strange relationship with Christmas music. Like I really don't like it, but
I don't
then
either.
I kind of like some Christmas tracks. I don't know. I was half kidding, but like it would be interesting.
I think it. I mean, we could do a Christmas episode, but it doesn't have to be a serious Christmas episode. Like it could
No.
just be us. Just I
Yeah.
don't know
Right. What's the first Christmas song that comes to your? If you say Christmas song, what is it?
what Christmas song first comes to mind.
Yeah.
It's that Paul McCartney one that I can't stand.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I
What is
love Paul McCartney, but just not that song.
which one is that?
Um,
I can't picture that one. Maybe that's for the better.
no, if you've heard
I'm
it,
sure I've
it's
heard it.
what's it called again? I'm gonna Google it.
Okay.
If you listeners at home can beat me to it,
Yeah.
then I don't know. I'm not gonna give you anything. Oh, Wonderful Christmas Time.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I don't
Yeah,
like it.
no.
No. Okay. My two, I either think of if somebody says Christmas song, I either think of the U2 Christmas song,
Oh
which
my
is
God,
which is just really not good. Although Bonham's vocals are pretty amazing in that track. Um,
that's the only redeeming quality of it. It's
the
such a bad song.
only such a bad song. But actually, the first one that comes to mind is "Go Tell It on the Mountain." which is like a Christmas gospel song. Uh,
Okay.
and if I will not, even now that I've mentioned it, I regret mentioning it because like I'll have it in my head for days and days and days. So maybe we should. I don't know.
Maybe we should. We should
Yeah,
just. It doesn't have to be a serious episode. It can
yeah,
just be just us, having a good time talking about the holiday season and Christmas music. And that I feel like Perry Como always comes out around Christmas time because
yeah. Well, I just saw a meme the other day, and it said it was from like 2 weeks ago or whatever. It was like it's November 1st. You know what that means? They're defrosting Mariah Carey.
oh no,
Poor Mariah. Anyway,
you know
um,
who's got a Christmas album that I didn't know about is
who?
Scott Weiland from STP.
No way. Did he really?
He does
Wow.
have a Christmas album.
Did he really? I feel like everyone's done one. I don't know. I don't know.
I don't mean to go on this road, but could you imagine a Radiohead Christmas album?
No, I can't. No, I can't. No, but it would probably be something like
That'd be horrible.
it. Well, I don't know. I feel like it would be like something darker than the Grinch. It would be like
Oh,
something
it would be just like nuclear holocaust around Christmas
dystopian.
time.
Be like a dystopian Grinch sort of. Yeah, yeah. Now I kind of want to hear that. All right,
I
Sam,
anyway,
pick a week, or pick a year. A year.
pick a year. Hmm.
Yeah.
The first year that came to mind is 1986.
We didn't do 1996, did we?
Did
Well, it
we?
doesn't
I
matter
don't know.
if
Okay,
we did
I
because
can pick a different year if you want.
no, it's all right. It's the first one you go. All right, week of November.
I
What do
think
we
I
got?
did 88 or 87 or something.
All right, we're going back to the 80s then. All right, so the week of the Hot 100 for the week of November 15th, 1986. Close enough for me. Number one on the chart was, I actually don't think I know this song. It was Amanda by Boston.
I know Boston.
I know Boston. I don't know that I know the song Amanda. Do you?
Is that off of the? What album is that off of? I'm curious.
I don't know. Amanda by Boston. Now I got to look it up. I usually I can picture Boston. It's on.
Let's see.
It's a power ballad by the rock band Boston. Of course,
Of
it would be a
course, it's a
power
power
ballad.
ballad. That's all they wrote are power
Yeah,
ballads.
it's on the album Third Stage
Yep, that's right.
from
I'm assuming
1986.
that's probably their third album.
Their third album. That's how deep they were. We're recording an album. Which was it? Our third. What should we call it?
Third
Third
stage.
Stage. Yeah, we're good with that.
The
Okay.
one worse was Portishead's third album. They simply titled it Third.
Third. Yeah. I do
Um,
not know this song at all, Amanda.
you know what's interesting though is that there was a long gap between Boston albums. So they did their debut in '76.
Yeah,
Don't Look Back in '78, and then Third Stage came out in '86. That's like 8 years.
that's in that in like in the music industry, that's like 50 years. So, yeah,
Huh.
I don't know. Amanda by Boston, which was the number one hit in 1986. Who knew? I will tell you that the number four on the Billboard Hot 100 for the week of November 15th, 1986, and this is a real classic, was Take Me Home Tonight by Eddie Money.
Oh yeah, come on, everybody's heard that song.
That is a fantastic track. And I'm
How
only
is it
being
only number
that,
4? That should be that number 1.
he probably moved up. He probably moved up.
Yeah, probably, or it was coming down.
Yeah. No, he was moving up according to this. He was
Oh,
in he said he moved up a spot, yeah. He was number 7. He moved up 2 spots. Last week he was number 7. This week, oh no, last week he was number 6. He moved up 1 spot. So there you go. Anyway, Amanda by Boston. I don't know the song, but that was what people were listening to in 1986.
I don't either, but
Getting ready
that's
for
interesting.
getting
Maybe we
ready
should
for
listen
like
to it.
getting ready for like a 1986 hairspray, like massive Thanksgiving with like shoulder pads and like press on nails. And like they were all gonna like right, and they were gonna go to their family's house with like
Don't forget the neon.
the yeah, that's true, the neon and like the black leather sofas with like the green rugs and stuff, and they'd be like, oh, it's the 80s, and like they'd all be like jamming out to Amanda by Boston as they like ate their turkey.
Yep, that's right. That
Fun.
sounds about right. That's what's on the radio while they're doing dishes and having a good
Yep.
time. That
Yep.
comes on, and then Eddie Money comes on. Yeah,
And
that's
then,
pretty
yep,
1986.
it's pretty 1986, and like the kids are in the basement, like the paneled finished basement, like watching, ET or something. Yeah, or
Yep.
Goonies. Yeah. Yep.
Yep,
So
exactly. That fake wooden panel. Oh my
fake wood
god.
paneling. Yep. Yep. All right. Well, there we have it. There's another episode of Generation Gap. This was fun. Now I'm kind
This
of
was a lot
jazzed
of
about
fun.
the Christmas episode.
I know this is gonna
Mm.
be. I have a feeling like a slightly unhinged,
Yeah.
crazy,
I feel like
interesting episode.
we should invite some guests for our Christmas episode. We got to get some guests in on our podcast.
Yeah, we should
Yeah,
talk about how to incorporate the guests, especially for the Christmas episode, and
definitely.
what
It,
we can do with them, like
it
the formatting wise. You know.
definitely. If you have been listening to Generation Gap with Sam and Paul, we love the fact that you're a listener, and we want you to probably be a part of our podcast. You should reach out to us. What's the email again, Sam, where people can email us?
The I think it's the Generation Gap Music Podcast at
Okay,
gmail.com.
it'll
If
be
that's
in.
incorrect, which it may be,
Mm,
because I can't remember anything, it is in our bio description.
link in bio. Email us. I promise we'll respond.
Link in bio. We
Yep,
will respond either on air or through email
or both.
or both,
All
which
right.
would be incredible.
All right, boys and girls, go listen to OK Computer. And before you do that, go listen to Amanda by Boston. No, don't. OK Computer
Don't do that.
first.
That'll ruin
No.
OK Computer. No,
Yeah,
no, no.
definitely. All right,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Sam. I'll catch you on the next episode.
You too.
All right. See ya
Peace.
later.